Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll probably start now so we can get cracking. Right, thanks everyone very much for coming. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. This session is access to funding and business support, and I understand we've also got some people that were looking at tax and HMRC in the UK with us. Maybe not. Oh, never mind. They're obviously in another workshop. We're going to run this hopefully very openly and with as much input from you guys as possible. So we've scheduled in some time for your contributions, and we'll make sure that we have lots of time for that. You all right? Some random wandering around the back. Never mind. So we'll start with Angela Kimberly. He's very kindly come down and agreed to take this first presentation. What we'll do is we'll wait for the end of the session, if that's okay, for questions, and then we can have a general discussion. Then we'll move on to the next speaker. At the end of that session, we can have more questions.
Does anyone speak English? Little? Yeah, okay. I do. I will do my best to get the messages across to you from this presentation. My name's Angela Kimberly, and I'm a business and education consultant. I'm also a coach, a business coach for a scheme called Growth Accelerator, which I'll tell you more about through the presentation. I also do some mentoring, and I also deliver some training. So I've been working with businesses around 30 years. I know you don't think I look old enough. Yeah. But I've been delivering for businesses for a long, long while. So I'll share some of the knowledge I know around the funding, grants, the schemes that we run in the UK. And that I've really been experiencing in probably the last 20 years. So. I'm going to break it down into start-up business, and then look at more established, and then look at what we would call, your high growth businesses that want to grow, want to expand. So I'm going to break it down for you. So a few pictures for you in where we're going to go this afternoon. We're going to talk a little bit about raising finance, a scheme called Enterprising Women, the new Enterprise Allowance, which is for people that are unemployed who want to start their own business. Enterprise Nation, a new business advisory service. The new Growth Vouchers, again, which is almost the middle bit of support between start-up and established. And then we're going to look at some other schemes that are growing the business. So I'm going to take you through each one, and hopefully you may have questions at the end that you wish to ask. Raising finance, there's a number of schemes really that have come through in the last year. The banks have been very difficult to get money from in the UK for business startup. There's a lot more risk assessment now. People are taking a lot more caution in actually giving money to business. So there are schemes such as Thurrock have been involved in what they call the type of funding, which is the 0% interest, they've been covered at some stage. But there's other things called SMARTA loans, start-up loans for the under 30s and then over 30s. Not sure why, they're different, they're the same thing. I think one came first and then they thought, oh, we forgot about the over 30s. So they actually added those ones in. Foundation East are a business support foundation where you can go to if the banks say no and if you really struggle, but they charge a higher interest. But again, it's another support agency. And then there's a later scheme called Enterprise Women, which I'm going to talk about in more depth. So what we're saying here, in terms of startup, it tends to be more around trying to raise finance, trying to raise funding for your business idea and trying to get the money that you need to start. There are other organisations that will help in terms of advice and guidance and mentor schemes to support you, but the main element tends to be how do we raise the finance. now because the banks are making it harder. Even mortgages now in the UK struggle to what it used to be like. So expand on one of the schemes. Enterprising Women is a new scheme that's just come along. Basically, start-up business loans for women that want to start their own business. Once they've actually been given that loan and agreed that loan, when they get support to do that, then they actually get allocated a mentor. And that mentor can work with them over a period of around 3 months, really, to help them. My experience has been that first time it's confidence, it's things you don't know, it's the uncertainty, not feeling sure about your business ideas are going to work. So that mentor can work with them, telephone, from email, meetings, face-to-face, Skype, whatever way it works. And the idea is to keep encouraging that person, giving them tools, giving them techniques, maybe helping them access additional funding or grants that they may be able to support. My experience of programs in terms of women, there have been a number of areas where there's grants for certain training, certain support in certain areas. So it's been a model for around about a few years, and Enterprising Women has always been there as an organisation to support. You all okay? Yeah. Interestingly enough, the new Enterprise Allowance was something set up about 2.5, 3 years ago, and it was designed for those people that are unemployed who want to start a business. So a lot of support from agencies has been if you want to get a job. But actually, if you want to run your own business and be your own boss, then there was support, and there still is for this. Basically, I've delivered for about 3 years a 4-day business startup workshop. From the minute you come in, it's what's your idea? What are you trying to do? What's your personal goals? What do you personally want? Because that has an influence on business, big influence on business goals and objectives. And the aim is for them to actually come out of those 4 days with a business plan, most significantly, a cash flow forecast. One of the biggest problems I think we have in business startup failure is that people avoid looking at their finances. They're frightened to look at the finances. If you look at the finances and you get your costs and your overheads and your pricing right, you have got far more chance of succeeding. So it's a really important part of that workshop. They also come out with what's called a survival budget. How much do I need to earn to live? Yeah? How much do I need to put food on the table, to feed your children, whatever it may be? And they also come out with their business plan. And at the end of that, they stand up like I am here, and they tell everyone about their business. And they're able to tell people about how much they're charging, and how much their overheads are, and how much money they plan to make in year 1. Yeah? So it's a really good feeling, really good feeling. The scheme also gives them access to what they call a business advisor, who's there to support them. And they have like a mentor hub, like a computer station where you can go in and link into a named person and help online. So the scheme has been very successful. They also have access to a startup loan, and in the first year it's interest only. So it's very low in interest rates. It's been a very, very good scheme. It's been run, and they're now re-tendering at the moment to continue it. So for unemployed, it's been a way for people to get back into the workplace, because you can be employed by yourself. It's just another job. You don't have to be a big business. It could just be yourself if you wanted. So it gives you options. There's a new scheme or a new government website, Enterprise Nation. They've basically set up now to try and nurture and support people online. And they provide things like a newsletter, they have online workshops, there's information, business books, events. The idea is for some people to go somewhere and find information, to look for where they can find extra support. But what they also have provided is something called Growth Vouchers. Now, Growth Vouchers are fairly new. They are being piloted at this moment. It looks like, from my understanding so far, it's bridging the gap between the startup and the experience, the established business. So there's something in that middle bit where businesses struggle with that help. What's interesting with it is they're talking about you need to have less than 50 staff, so it's a small company. It's access to up to £2,000 match funding, so they have to pay £2,000 to get £2,000, but they can use it for consultancy. Now, consultancy tends to be a word that's not used in funding. It tends to be seen as something you're not allowed to do. But consultancy can make a business grow quickly because somebody can do some of that work for them rather than coaching them. They're different. They're different. Fairly new, and I think they will continue to go through. You have to be on a register, on a sort of, and you have to be quality assured, and you can find your growth voucher advisor, or you can be a supplier. But I think it's a really good model. These are the themes: raising finance, managing cash flow, recruiting and developing staff, leadership management, marketing and customer service, and IT. What's interesting with this, all of my experience, I've never seen this. It's an online application, and it's a bit of a lottery. It's like, they're not probing you with a million forms, it's yes, you might get it, yes, you might not. I don't know what will happen if you don't. I'd be interested to find out why you get refused. There's something called innovation vouchers, where people are allowed to, again, get some funding towards their idea. So the idea will be to support them in terms of developing something. So it might be a game, or it might be something that's particularly needs some work being done on that, IP or something. And they're there to support it. Again, as either 25% or it's 25,000 of eligible costs. Businesses, next stage up here, must have under 250 employees. We call them SMEs. Yeah. Okay? All right, okay? Yeah. So, one of the most growth schemes in the UK at the moment is called Growth Accelerator. And the idea of this is that businesses can have access to a business coach, normally between a period of 6 to 12 months, to work alongside them, work in their business with them, keep them motivated, keep them on track, help them to set goals, and work alongside them and the rest of their teams. I've worked with a number of clients where I'm actually working with the senior directors in the organisation, getting them to work closer together, because if we think leadership comes from the top, and it's about then trying to escalate down to the things they need to do. On that scheme, they also get 6 half-day workshops, and the other idea is they get what we call connectivity. So if I know something that they can access, if I know funding that they might benefit from, I will tell them about it. I will bring in right people for them. I'll introduce them to good people. So they get more and a lot more support. Okay. And leadership and management funding. Every business needs a good leader. Everyone needs somebody who can actually drive that business. So the idea is to give funding towards developing the skills of the directors or the senior managers. So part of Growth Accelerator has an extra pot of money. where people can access up to £2,000 per senior director for their funding. Example of that would be a company who's got 12 senior managers, directors, who's just spent 24,000 and access to £12,000 back for their training. So it can be very, very viable. They have to be signed to the programme. That's the difference. You can't get the funding without being on the programme. And then really they need to be involved in the strategic direction. It's got to be someone who can make change in that business, who can really drive that business. Manufacturing advisory service, you may have heard about this morning. It's the manufacturing sector. Again, someone on Growth Accelerator might be a manufacturer and they need some extra support for a project. So we can bring in that extra support and that extra funding to help them. So I have clients that access that in terms of the manufacturing side. Again, it's a match funding, there's consultants. It's all about knowledge, sharing knowledge. And then there's the regional growth funding, which is now something that has been available and has to be sort of drawn down by 2017. And this is all about money to grow our businesses now, to actually put jobs back in, to see economic growth, to make change in business. We've been through difficult times, so this is about getting us back on track. And these examples are with Thurrock, we've talked around the 0% funding. Southend have got what they call 30% of funding towards capital investment, or it can also be particular things that you could do like marketing or website development. So they're giving 30% back. And a client of mine is buying, for example, 2 cash registers and CCTV cameras for their shop and get 30% back. So it's a good scheme. Outcome, create jobs, keep jobs, retain jobs. And then low carbon business, slightly different. This is about businesses doing the right thing. This is about businesses actually being more environmental friendly, about helping them in terms of making sure they've got the right heating, the right lighting, being more efficient. And there's loans to support that too. Again, up to £10,000. So finally, just a few support agencies where this support is available. On the slides, you've got the business and innovation skills, you've got small business, you've got the marketplace nation, and you've got the growth vouchers. But there are places that you can go for some of this. But my passing words really is that my experience of working with businesses now is that businesses don't know how to find this. They don't know how to find this funding. They don't understand how it works. They need support. They need help. So having someone or people that can actually help them access it and understand it is where I think makes a difference. So that's really the presentation. That's
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a rapporteur in the house? I was told we have one. Yes?
Me and we are.
Yes? In which case, would you want to take some notes on the questions? That's okay, so that we've got record. Oh, that's not right, you don't want that. So yeah, really, just, has anyone got any immediate questions for Angela? Any thoughts, anything that springs to mind?
Angela, you said that you think people struggle to find access to these channels.
Yeah.
How, when they are finding out about them, where are they finding out about them? How do you think we can do it better?
I think there are a lot of support agencies, but there isn't a central hub. There isn't anywhere centrally where they can go now. It just means that you have to know who the partners are, where the funding is, and you have to follow that funding. So, BizGov UK have got a website. I think they can maximise it better. I don't doing this international. I think they should add more about regional, maybe regional areas on there. Because otherwise it's needle in a haystack. You need to know someone.
I do have a question for you. I think you mentioned the concept of connecting.
Yes.
But I was wondering whether you work at all with Connect UK, which is a member of a larger global Connect network. And the reason why I'm asking, because on another project we had the chance to know a bit more in depth what Connect Denmark is doing, and that was very interesting. For those who may not be familiar, it's actually top managers from top companies, consultants, or retired top level managers, providing for free advice to startups, and they're doing it for free. For companies, it's part of the CSR, and for others, it's just the opportunity to know about high potential startups and maybe be partners from the beginning. So I was wondering whether you had the chance to cooperate with this network, or to actually apply this model, and whether it was successful, or you feel that there were some shortcomings in the model itself.
I have seen the model, and I would say there's probably similar models, but called something different. And I think one of the issues you have is everywhere. If you think about local areas, we all have local initiatives or local knowledge, and I think when you have a very big network, some doesn't translate as much in the right way to what you need. So you've got general messages, but what people are lacking is this intense support, this next level down. So, for example, I think the Enterprise Nation marketplace is all about Richard Branson and people giving information, but it's that next level down. How do we help people on the ground when they need that real one-to-one advice? So I think it's a good thing. I think we need one model though. There's too many different options. Right. And again, if someone knows Connect, they know where to go. But if they don't, they're going somewhere else. So I think they all help. They all help, and it depends on the network you're in.
Because the idea that we got from at least Connect Denmark is that what they're supporting is actually startups that are aiming very high. But it may be the case that you have good ideas that have a smaller scope in terms of their final market, like the ones maybe that we heard about before. And in that case, the Connect model kind of seems to fail, because the consultants, so to speak, that are giving their advice in time for free are used to work on a global scale, and they don't, their
and they
advice
don't necessarily have the time. They may give you advice for free, but it is a limited amount of time.
And they might end up by rejecting projects that might be valuable and successful,
but not in their scale.
It's not, they're not, considering a scale that is actually achievable or even suitable for everybody. That's the idea that we got. So
I think it is be about the target market it's for. If it is high growth, then make that clear that it's high growth, and define that criterion. If high growth is, you need to be aiming for this much turnover in year one, because then it's clearer. So you don't like a job, you wouldn't go for something if you didn't think, and it might work. It's a little bit tighter that way.
One other source of funding that's recently come online and proven to be quite popular in Thurrock is through our local credit union, which is Accelerators. I think for us, we work with some startup businesses locally, and one of the big failings of a lot of the grant giving systems is that they depend on an application process that effectively excludes a good percentage of the population before they even get there. So presenting someone with a 7-page form and they need to describe their business and plan is often enough of a barrier to make the person not go through the application for funding. The difference with the credit union model is it's not based on an application process in that way. It's based on someone's loan capacity, which is measured to be how long they've had an account, what their ability is like to pay that back. It's not necessarily based on them arguing their case. So we are seeing some growth with that in Thurrock, which is a good thing. I think in terms of nationally as well, it's recently gained some traction with the Church of England. I believe it's the Church of England. It is the Church of England. Church of England, they basically said they're going to use their land assets, so i.e. their churches, in order to open more branches of the credit unions, effectively make it more like a high street bank. So a lot of the reason that people didn't use credit unions in the past is the fact that they said, well, we're supposed to make a deposit every week. If there's only one collection point and there's only someone there for an hour a day, then it's very difficult for us to do that. Hopefully with this larger network of deposit points and access to people through the churches, it's actually going to open that facility up to far more people that aren't able to access funding through the usual channels.
I think the process of getting grants and funding is one of the most difficult things, and clients do benefit when they have someone who can help them, who can take them through that and help them. And I think that is another area I think that needs more support.
I was just going to say that one of the things that seems to be an issue is that when there is funding through the government, the language that is used for the funding is quite complicated for commercial businesses to understand. So we tend to find that we need to demystify that so that commercial businesses can actually understand some of the language that is spoken through government when there's funding that's available as well.
Lots of what we call jargon.
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 Yeah, you don't know half of it. I mean, UK is relatively good on that sort of thing compared to what you get in some parts of Europe. I mean, it only gets worse.
Oh dear.
Not too bad then.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, presented a lot about loans and match funding. For young people who are leaving school, don't have any idea of finance, so are there any schemes that they can get a small amount of money that they're not panicking, I've got to give this back?
I mean, you have things like Princess Trust, who help young people in enterprise, and there was also, depending on the age, 18 to 24, there's start-up programs now to support them. And I said there's the loans, there's like an 18 to 24, it's 18 to 30 loan now. But it comes
it's
as
still a loan.
Yeah, it comes as an interest, so yes, they are encouraging. And even people like the banks, Barclays Bank, some of the banks actually do put money on, do actually put call-outs to provide start-up support. Even some of those are gifts like grants, business ideas. So I think the first thing they need to be is they need to have that bit of support at the beginning, to have a concept, have someone, a business advisor maybe help them, and then have someone to sort of drive them. And then if they're passionate about it, there's a route there. There is a route there. It's just about, it goes back to business. You have to be passionate to want to do it. But if there's help on the way, there is. Maybe not as much as they could be. But the new enterprise allowance, I think if people are unemployed trying to get a job, I've had people on the course 19 plus who've come on there and set up their businesses. I had a guitar player, someone playing guitar. It doesn't have to be, it can be a startup business, it can be one person, it's still business at that point. So.
What did you do? What was the guitar guy's business?
Teaching guitar lessons.
Okay.
So if he wanted to expand, he would bring in other guitarists and other people,
Sorry, take a minute about that.
First of all, thank you, Angela, for your brief but very helpful presentation about the instruments, and I'll also thank Chris for replacing me over there.
I'm doing a good job.
Because he writes much better than me English, so thank you so much. I'm from Portugal, from North region, and we are having a serious debate regarding the unemployment issue about the role of the job centers.
Yeah.
What I don't, because our results of our job centers, they manage a lot of instruments, but the results that they get against the employment rate aren't sufficient, aren't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a major problem, and the main discussion right now is to deliver this fight against the unemployment to the private sector.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking, one of the questions that I have is, who runs all these instruments that you have briefed us over here?
Okay.
All these growth vouchers, United Alliances, and so on.
Different departments. So if you talk about
All
job
public
centre,
or
no, they're all public.
public?
So the job, if for example, job centre,
Yeah.
we have Department of Work and Pensions. They actually have different schemes that they actually decide on. They had something called the work programme for those people that literally they've been on courses, they've gone to start up, they're just not planning to get a job. So the idea is that they need to either do voluntary, or not voluntary, but mandatory work to get them back into that work environment, thinking that way. I think the issue has been in job centres is that there are advisors that have too much information that they need to know. There are too many schemes to advise people. And they only, my understanding now from an advisor I know, is they only get 3 minutes with a person to make some decisions about that person and what they can do. So things like the new enterprise allowance put a little bit of a slant on it to say that actually getting a job isn't just about being employed. Getting a job could also be about working for yourself, and being self-employed. So we always think of start-up business as a business, but you can also be self-employed as a business. So Skills Funding Agency, Business Innovation and Skills, they tend to focus business innovation skills on all the business funding, and the Skills Funding Agency tends to look at all the skills areas, all the training and all of that together. So they all should be working together, to be honest. Doesn't always happen that way.
Sorry, Angela.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can I just supplement that UK background? The delegation is coming to Enfield tomorrow, and we've got our Department for Work and Pensions colleague presenting, giving us a bit more information on the new enterprise allowance. But I think the nub of your question is actually that in the UK, it's quite a confusing landscape where we have different government departments offering loans, grants, schemes, new ideas, and it's a bit like the Department for Work and Pensions panic. How do we solve the problem of unemployment? Let's try the work programme. The work programme has been running now since, I think, 2.5, 3 years. And the work programme, as Angela was describing, it's where people have been claiming unemployment benefit for over 1 year. They are automatically referred to the work programme, which is delivered by private sector contractors like Serco, if you've heard of Serco, big company that you've never heard of, G4S, Reed in partnership. They're big commercial businesses, and the idea is that people go to the job centre to sign on to receive their benefits in money, but then they go to this agency for their career advice, for CV support, all those other features about getting into work. And what that initiative had was a black box approach. So DWP, the government department, doesn't actually know in detail what the private contractor is delivering. The end result is that the private contractor is paid if that person manages to sustain their job for 6 months, 12 months. So that means, sorry, I'll finish in a second. Okay, people who are very hard to help, people with lots of barriers, drug problems, debt, alcohol, poor housing, no skills, mental health issues. Those people at the bottom of the heap, as we call them, may be left. They're abandoned. They're not helped because that person will not get the commercial company a result to pay them for all that support.
Yeah, and I think that has diluted this issue and its quality control now to see that the services they provide are the same. And I know that when it first came out, I did a lot with KPMG and the workshops, and there was confusion as well amongst the providers, the people that are dealing with it, about how they're going to manage the funding.
Just to be clear, they can cherry pick who they...
They're not supposed
They're
to.
not supposed to,
They're not
Ian,
supposed
but
to.
because they have a black box approach, who knows? It's a bit like you have somebody walking along a cliff and then they just disappear. And the sharing of data is very, very sensitive, and getting information about the results of the work programme, well, it's very difficult.
Being paid on outcomes is very different to being paid up front and having money to manage a business. And if you're paid on results, which they are, they have to fund that throughout that journey.
Who's going to get you your 2,000 quid reward?
But some of the schemes work, some don't. But I think the point, it is, again, that point, I always think, I think it's the same with biz, if I'm honest. They sit in a room and think, all right, we've got to get jobs, we've got to do this, we've got to get high growth again, what should we do? Instead of thinking, what's the gap in our business model? And if there is a gap in our business model, I think, yes, there is a bit for startup, a bit of support for startup, but not enough. Yeah, there's more support for growth established than there is for that initial 1 to 5 employees. Very, very little support compared to that next level up. So.
Thank you. Any other really pressing questions that people need to get off their chests? No. In which case, thank you very much for all the contributions. Thank you, Angela. We're going to introduce and try and get this right. Dr. Mateus Vogel-Gesser. I think that's about right. He hasn't corrected me. So, yes, Spice Car. And Mateus did mention everyone that his surname actually translates into English as well. So, which is very useful. And it makes makes me feel like my surname is a bit dull. And it's not very
Okay, thank you, Chris, for your nice introduction. I'm first searching for my presentation. Okay. Yes, my name is Matthias Vogelgesang from the Economic Development Agency Kaiserslautern, shareholders of our company as a city and the county of Kaiserslautern. Additionally, I'm a lecturer for 2 universities in Kaiserslautern, and my special topic is founding and support the founding process. The topic of our today meeting is consulting infrastructure for entrepreneurship and venture capital. And I have got some examples from Kaiserslautern. First of all, I will inform you about the Kaiserslautern area, only a short overview about this. Then I will inform you about consulting infrastructure, our banking system, the banking system in Germany. Later, I will talk about venture capital in Germany, and other specific programs for founders. Here are some impressions about the Kaiserslautern area. Kaiserslautern was 8 years ago part of the Football World Championship. We had a lot of visitors from the whole world, and it was a very nice time. And it was very great for our area. It was a big chance. On the left, you will also see a view of our pedestrian zone and of some celebrations. Where is Kaiserslautern? First of all, Germany. You see it here on the, it's a red point in the middle of Europe with 9 different partner states, 9 different borders to other countries. Kaiserslautern is located in the southwest of Germany in a state called Rhineland-Palatinate. Germany has got 16 different states, and one of these is Rhineland-Palatinate. Kaiserslautern is surrounded by a district of Kaiserslautern with a lot of small towns and villages and so on. We have got about 100,000 citizens in Kaiserslautern and additionally 105,000 citizens in the district of Kaiserslautern. And we have got 57,000 American people who are connected in a so-called American community. It's the largest American community outside the United States of America. Science is very important for our area. We have 2 universities, the Technical University with about 14,000 students and the University of Applied Science with 5,700 students. And we have also 9 research institutes with about 800 scientists. The economic structure is focused on engineering, science, computer science, automotive and commercial vehicle industry, trade and administration. And most of our companies are small and medium-sized companies. The biggest company in Kaiserslautern is Opel. It's part of the GM company. But most of our companies are more small with about 20 to 200 employees. We try to connect all of these companies. We think it's very important that the companies get in contact with other companies and in contact with our science, with our institutes. Here you see a small pie chart of the structure of the employees with 29%. The private sector is very important, the private service sector, and also the manufacturing and production sector is important with 27%. On place 3, there is a public service sector. Very important are the spin-offs for our region. In the last 20 years, more than 85 companies have been set up by founders, by the regional universities, or by our alumni. And these companies offer more than 2,200 jobs during this time. We think this is a very important part of our economic structure changing during this time. Let's see the consulting infrastructure for entrepreneurship in the region of Kaiserslautern. My company, the Economic Development Agency, has only 7 employees. It's a very small company, but I repeat it, we are a part of the city and of the community of Kaiserslautern, and we offer a lot of general business services. For example, consulting about government subsidies. This is an important part to inform our companies about the chances to get these subsidies and help them to set up the forms for the subsidies. We inform also about commercial real estate. It's sometimes a little bit complicated to find a good area for your business, a good location, and we have a lot of maps and we have a lot of data about this topic and can help companies to find this. We build networks between these companies and between other important stakeholders, and we are reporting about the regional economy. This is our general business service, but we offer also a special service for founders. For example, we assist by the development of business ideas. In people who are interested on set up a company came to my company, and so it is very important to talk with these people about ideas, about chances, about alternatives, and so on and so on. We also help for creating a business plan. It sounds a little bit simple, but in the reality it's often a little bit complicated to create a good business plan and to create a business plan for these companies who are take off a presentation at a bank, for example. We accompany often founders to bank meetings. If a company would like to get a loan, it is often important for them to have someone who accompany these to the bank, and so it's our job to do this. And we inform also founders about government subsidies. And where's a good business location? It's also for founders often a problem to find the right business location. Often are the buildings horrible expensive in Kaiserslautern, and so it's a big challenge to find a suitable building. All of our service is totally free of charge, and I think this is also important. There are some other consulting agencies for entrepreneurship in our region. There are no private stakeholders. Mostly of them are publicly financed. They have a different size and organization, and they are located in Kaiserslautern. I think we should see it on the next foil. If you start your business, often you have got an idea in your head, and the next step is to create a concept, to create a business model, to make a business plan, to have a foundation, the startup and the growth. These are different steps on your way in your business. And the other consulting stakeholders are located on different steps. First of all, on the left you will see the so-called Gründungsbüro. The Gründungsbüro is part of the Technical University Kaiserslautern and the University of Applied Sciences in Kaiserslautern. And the focus of the Gründungsbüro are on students. They have to inform students about business ideas, and they offer, for example, a so-called summer school. It's 1 week, and they invite a lot of specialists for the business topic, for example, lawyers, tax consultants, and other advisors. And this is a very nice thing for the young students. They can inform about this, and they can discuss with the consultants about this topic. It's a focus on the pre-foundation phase. The next big player in our area is the Business and Innovation Center. The Business and Innovation Center is part of the state of Rhineland-Palatinate. And the big offer, for example, rooms, infrastructure. You can go into our big without anything, and you can use the whole infrastructure of this company, and we think they make a very important job for our young founders, and they offer a lot of networks, for example, for business people in different sectors, and so on and so on. And we have other stakeholders. For example, the Handwerkskammer Rheinland-Pfalz, it's called the Chamber of Crafts, and the IHK, it's the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. They offer their service for special sectors. For example, the Chamber of Industry and Commerce offers a service for the industry, for the trade, and so on. I think we have got a problem here with the... Okay, fine. On both chambers there is a mandatory membership, and they have all a very long tradition, more than 100 years are they old. But they offer a service for the whole process of setup, from the first idea to the startup and the growth. The banking system in Germany, I think it's a little bit different than here in the UK. We have got 3 totally different parts of banks in Germany. The first bank is a so-called Sparkasse. I think it's translated in the English saving banks. Yeah. The owner of these Sparkassen are mostly the towns, the cities, or the districts. We have got in Kaiserslautern 2 Sparkassen. It's the Kreissparkasse Kaiserslautern and the Stadtsparkasse Kaiserslautern. It's one part of our banking system. Another part are the cooperative banks, and the owner of these cooperative banks are the Accelerators. For example, the Volksbank. And the third part of our banking system are the private banks with private shareholders, like the Deutsche Bank or like the Commerzbank. For founders are the first 2 parts the important one. Founders often go to the Sparkassen or to the associates banks. If they are successful on their business and they have experience of 2 or 3 years, they can go to a private bank. But private banks are often not very amused to support founders in the first phase of their business. I think they are not in every case is this, but often it is the situation. In Rhineland-Palatinate, there's also a special program called Venture Capital, and this venture capital is only for one part of Rhineland-Palatinate. It's in the west of Rhineland-Palatinate. And here is a venture capital Westpfalz. Most of the shares are at the so-called ESB. It's the Investment and Economic Development Bank. It's a state bank. It is connected with the government of Rhineland-Palatinate, and we, with our Economic Development Agency, have only 5% of the shares of these venture capital Westpfalz. The requirements for an investment of venture capital is that the place of innovation must located in Rhineland-Palatinate. The project is innovative and promising. This is also necessary. The applied funds are used for concrete projects. The initiators are expected to invest appropriate own capital, and it isn't possible to take the money to restructuring in restructuring cases. Every round of financing can bring up to 500,000 euro. It's a really high amount, but it is the maximum. Often the companies get a lower capital. The participate can be directly or indirectly. These are two forms of participation: shareholding on the one hand and silent partnership on the other one. The annual interest rate is about 8.5%. These have a founder to pay for this venture capital. It's a high risk sector, and in case of annual profit, they have to pay additional 2.5%. And they have to pay the so-called handling fee of 1%. These are the facts about this program, but we think it's more for high qualified people who would like to get a bigger business. We have other special programs for founders. One is so-called Startgeld. It's a start-up loan of a maximum of 100,000 euros. The Startgeld will provide from the so-called KfW, Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau. This bank is a government bank, and it is located in Berlin and in Frankfurt. But it isn't possible for founders to get directly in connection with this bank. They have to go to their so-called house bank, to the Sparkasse, for example, or to the Volksbank. And the house bank get in connection with the KfW, and in the worst case, if a founder cannot pay the loan back, the loan of maximum 100,000 euro, the house bank has only to pay for 20%. They have to pay 20,000 euros in this case, and the KfW have to pay 80,000 euros. So it is a possibility for the house bank to reduce their risks. And this is often a good way for founders to get a loan, for example, 30,000 euros, 40,000 euros. In this sums, it is a good thing. And we have also the regional sponsoring with subsidies in the former time up to 21 or to 24%. But now this sum will changing, and we do not know the new sum. I think we will get it in the autumn this year. And we have got an innovation fund for special programs, for very innovative programs, and so on. We think that the consulting infrastructure and the financing infrastructure in our area is in a well condition, but we think also that we should create more special programs for smaller setup companies who only need 3,000 euros, 4,000 euros, 5,000 euros. In these cases, banks often say, oh no, it isn't possible because we have got a lot of work with this and we cannot earn a lot of money. And so it is sometimes more easy to get a higher loan than a lower loan. This is the situation in Kaiserslautern. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Matthias. That's really interesting. We'll open up to questions if that's
Are there any questions?
Matthias, thanks very much for the presentation. I'd like to ask you a specific question about how you're funded to provide this support free of charge. So how do you get your funding as a commercial business to provide support free of charge?
Okay, we are supported by the city and by the county of Kaiserslautern, and they gave us the money to do our job.
Okay, do you have to bid for that money, or is it just given to you annually?
They give the money annually. We got it off the city and the county, And with this money we can make our job, but it is a flat. We get one amount a year, and this is it. Yes.
Okay. So because of that, do you have to restrict your services, or can you go out commercially to attract other money, other finance?
Sorry, could you repeat it?
So because you get a flat amount of money,
Yes, I got
you can only do so much with that money.
Yes.
So if you need more, can you go to the market to attract more money?
No, it isn't possible for us to get more money, but we can only get in networks like this one here, and we can create with our network partners no plans, but it isn't possible to get more money with other EU money or so. It is not the tradition of our company. It's sometimes a little bit hard, but it is a situation for us.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I've got one actually. Matthias, at one point you mentioned mandatory membership of what sounded like Chamber of Commerce, but it was mandatory membership. I'm just imagining our own Chamber of Commerce rubbing their hands with glee that actually everyone had to be members. But how does that work in Kaiserslautern?
Okay, if you would like to start up a company in Kaiserslautern, you will get a mandatory membership. If you work in the craft sector, you got the membership of the Chamber of Crafts. And if you work in the service or in such a field, you will get obligatory membership of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Only if you are a freelancer, so you will get no membership. I think it's a part of the German tradition to get such a membership, but you have to pay for this every year, and some of these companies work very often with their chambers and they get a big advantage from this work, but other companies do not work so much with these chambers and they only pay money to them, and so it's sometimes a little bit complicated on this field. But I think the chambers provide a wide range of different services. The Chamber of Industry and Commerce in Rheinland-Palatinate has only in the part of Ludwigshafen, this is a quarter of the whole Rheinland-Palatinate. They have got 130 employees, and they offer, for example, a lot of further education or inform about foreign markets and so on. So it is a good thing for the companies to get in connection with their chambers.
Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself when I made my first question. Sorry. My name is Giulia Bubolini and I'm from Italy. I've actually been invited here by the city of Cesena, but I work for the innovation agency of the Chamber of Commerce of for Cesena. Sorry, I'm not standing up because I have very low blood pressure, so if I stand up then I'll just fall down. So, but on the concept of mandatory membership to Chambers of Commerce, the system is kind of the same in Italy. Every company has to be a member of the local being at the moment the provincial Chamber of Commerce, but there's a actually an idea of making them regional, but that doesn't really make any difference. But anyway, the reason why every company has to be a member of the chamber is because by keeping the register of all companies in Italy, chambers of commerce are able to ensure transparency within the market. If I'm a company and I want to make sure that my potential business partner is actually a company and and its situation is regular and it's a reliable partner, I go back to the chamber and I know whether it exists, and if it's not a single owner company, I can actually know about their profit and loss account. So there's a role of the chambers of ensuring transparency. They also, by owning this kind of databases, they can also provide statistics on the local economic environment And then of course they also provide services to promote local economic development. My agency is actually funded by the chamber, and just to give you a rough idea, the average fee that an Italian company has to pay is 195 euros per year. Sorry, that's actually the minimum, but I think the highest is about 20,000 euros, but I'm talking about big companies.
Fiat or something.
Yeah. Of course, now they're thinking of reducing it by 50%, but they're also thinking of revising the role of the chambers of commerce. But that of ensuring transparency is not an issue that is being discussed. That will stay. So I think it's more or less the same system. But of course, being it mandatory, you have to give something back. So that's why they create entities like us. Sorry.
Just to add on, and we'll break for coffee in just a second. But I mean, the English experience or the UK experience is that chambers of commerce aren't mandatory, and in actual fact, they compete for custom. So in order to justify their membership fee, they provide a range of services. And quite often now, they've become so sort of dispersed and do so many different functions. Some of them great, some of them not so great. But they're also competing in private markets really for stuff like business consultancy, procurement advice, training, education services, etc. As well as running. I mean, their major. I guess it's not really a statutory service, but they also run databases of business, so they maintain databases that are useful. But it's just very interesting that it's a very different experience in Germany.
Actually, business associations were thinking of asking to make it not mandatory to be associated to a chamber, but then they realized that the chambers to survive would have to go, into the market. Then they thought, better. So they said, no, we don't want new competitors. So it's okay that it's mandatory and you pay a smaller fee, but the market is already crowded enough. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic.
Sorry, can I just add to what you're saying from the UK perspective? In Enfield, we commission our local Chamber of Commerce to deliver certain services, we the council. So we give them actually quite a lot of money to deliver services. But I think when we came to Kaiserslautern, we were very impressed with this model that seems to be prevalent in other European nations, that it's a mandatory requirement for businesses to register with their Chamber of Commerce as they establish themselves, because it gives the more credibility to the business, and it gives the Chamber of Commerce a stronger role. Because one of the things we've commissioned our Chamber of Commerce to do, for example, is to run strategic breakfast meetings, to set up sector boards where we bring different businesses in the same area, like construction, logistics, health and social care, to get them to work, to talk together about recruitment and retention, those sort of issues. But I think the fact that you've got your businesses automatically pay a small subscription means that they're driving what they get out of their local Chamber of Commerce, which I think, I don't know if you agree, but it sounds good, doesn't it, how they do it in Europe?
I
think there's a lot to learn from that.
Our chambers of commerce can be very disparate, and you get different offers in different locations. And I know in Europe your model is much more common and much more consistent. I think it's a model that would benefit the UK, to be honest.
And the good thing is also that we're entitled to structural EU funding, being public bodies. So this helps a lot in terms of international.
And your point earlier about connectivity and organisations, in that model, you can share that knowledge across a wide range, rather than it being each region finding out depending on the chamber.
Ian, you're going to make a quick point, and then we'll...
A question with the fees. Do they have deals like, say, a new company that's starting out? They can have a few years they don't pay because 195 euros for an established small company is no big deal, but in that first, like the guy starting out the gym we saw earlier, I mean, in that first moment of starting a small business, that could
I think the first 2 years are free of charge, and later the annual fee depends on the profit or on such things. Yes.
Okay, so there are mechanisms to soften.
Yes, yes.
Brilliant.
Is it the same in Italy?
No, in Italy you don't, you get, you don't get to pay certain taxes like VAT or something, but you do have to pay the annual fee to the chambers.
First year right away.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Because part of it is actually registration fees type of thing. So it's not. It doesn't depend on the single chamber of commerce. It's a national system, and the database is actually maintained by like a company that's participated by the whole chamber, all the chambers of commerce. So there's no discount actually.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think what we'll do now, we'll break for coffee. So it's 3 o'clock, so shall we meet back here at 20 past 3? Okay. I'll be in here from 10 past, but if you want to make your way back, and then we'll do the rest of the presentations. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, that was interesting. You okay? Do you want to?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Casos práticos.
Acho que é seguinte.
É?
Não. Não.
Uma apresentação seguinte.
Os práticos na mentoria.
Eu acho que foi um.
Espera lá, são duas
Aveiro.
And you where?
Aveiro.
Oh, great.
finishing frank conversation.
It's a cool space, this, isn't it?
Looking at it, it looks quite new, but it's irregular too, like it's medieval. Is it like faux medieval or what is it? What?
I think the original is 17th century.
Yeah, like these bits here. Right?
Is that about right?
It's one of the oldest barns of its type. It's a heritage barn, so
Okay.
it's got a conservation order on it.
It's awesome, yeah.
There's spelling mistakes in the what do you call it, the thing that comes on with pictures.
Yes.
What do you call it? The screen. Screensaver.
Screensaver.
It's the apostrophes.
Are there many more outside?
One, I think.
Or one?
We don't know how long that conversation
We'll
will be.
kick
So
off. Okay,
shall we-
alright, well let's kick off.
Got a critical mass and just.
Alright. Well, thanks everyone for having me here today. I'm Jane Cormack and I'm Head of Public Sector Marketing for YTKO Group, which is a UK-based organisation which offers a variety of products and services, all geared towards supporting businesses through creation and growth. Our flagship program, Outset, is a non-profit service that helps to remove barriers to enterprise through the combined approach of personal development, business skills workshops, mentoring support and access to finance programs. And this week, we're all here to talk about opportunities and solutions for addressing youth unemployment across Europe. And today's session, I hope to fuel this discussion by focusing on one of the barriers people of all ages face, on some of the barriers people of all ages face when it comes to self-employment, and the strategies we employ here in the UK through the Outset program in order to both empower these individuals and strengthen their local communities. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to mix things up a little bit because we've been sitting down a lot, and I wanted to do a little bit of an exercise. So, hoping you can humour me for a moment, but I'm going to hold this item up. Hopefully you all know what it is. But I want you to, on a piece of paper, has everyone got a piece of paper and a pen? Or some writing, you can do it on your laptop even. But I want you to write down somewhere some uses for this item. Some uses. How could you use this item? What could you use it for? Anything that comes to mind. You know what? Why don't you talk amongst yourselves as well? Talk to the person next to you and see if you're coming up with similar things, or if you've got different lists. I forgot to say also, it's fine if you want to cut it up, stretch it out. You can change the format of the object, so don't worry about keeping it in shape. You could also melt it down if you're thinking of anything else. That's another option. Alrighty, 10 more seconds. Alright, I'm hearing lots of rumblings over here. How many items do you guys have on your list? 6 over here? 7. You got 7? What about you guys over here? 20. Okay. What I wonder, did anyone have the term? Just list the term bag, because obviously that's what it is. Has everyone got bag on their list? Yeah. Okay, cool. What about hat? Anyone? Yeah. You got hat? Okay, cool. What else? What's another one you've got over here?
Christmas decorations.
Christmas decorations. decorations. Anyone else have that?
No.
What did you guys have? What's another random one you have?
Groceries.
Groceries, okay, cool. What about you guys?
Suffocation.
I was actually going to say, for the sick people in the audience, does anyone have murder weapon? And you guys are obviously the crazy ones. Does anyone have marketing on this?
Advertising.
Advertising, perfect. Now, thanks guys. I guess the interesting thing about this exercise is when we do it with children, children will usually come up with a list that is double the size of what adults are able to generate. The broader point being that there is always more than one way of looking at things. And it depends on the restrictions you place on things. You'll notice as I kind of allowed you to talk amongst each other, I'm hoping your lists kind of increased. You came up with other options. As we talked about, actually cut this up, you can change the shape, potentially other ideas came to your head. And ultimately, by removing boundaries and things like that, that's where you start thinking about things differently and new and endless possibilities emerge. And this is the same philosophy that we apply in working with clients in the Outset program. As I hope to show you in the next 20 minutes, our approach is 100% designed in order to help people break down these walls, bring them together with others to brainstorm and share ideas, and challenge them to think about things differently in order to remove or overcome barriers that they might perceive themselves to have when it comes to enterprise. So, before I get started today, I thought I might give you a little bit of an overview of YTKO Group so that you can understand the heritage from which the Outset program emerges. Across the group, we work with businesses from the beginning, offering pre- and post-start support through our Outset program, which also includes extensions in the form of specialised finance coaching and a home learning online provision. We work specifically with female business owners at various stages through our Enterprise and Women Network, which Angela has already mentioned today. And we provide these women with access to a community of peers and other resources and support for maintaining sustainable business operations. Then, as business owners move into their growth phase, we introduce Get Set for Growth, helping them navigate all manner of challenges, from taking on new staff to expanding their premises and exporting their services. And at a private sector level, Versio functions as more of a traditional marketing and business consultancy, working with established businesses to help them grow and prosper. As you can see, YTKO brings together over 30 years' experience supporting individuals and organisations at various stages of the business lifecycle, leaving us in a unique position to understand the psyche of today's business owner and the challenges they face. So back to why we're here today. In the survey that JobTown circulated prior to the workshop, many of you identified these challenges in terms of engaging youth on the topic of self-employment. The cultural misperception of enterprise is something that's too risky or too hard. The lack of confidence, which permeates many, leading them to doubt their abilities and fear the consequences of failure. For many, it's the very real barrier of lack of skills and training, the I just wouldn't know how to start conversation. And consequently, there's the perception that there's nowhere to turn for help, even if they did want to launch their own business. Finance is well documented as one of the biggest barriers to enterprise, and the fear of getting into debt seems to hold many individuals back. Not to mention the raft of personal factors that may ultimately contribute to a lack of confidence. By show of hands, who can identify with any or all of these challenges from your local area? If you don't identify them with them, are there other barriers that you think I might have missed? We'll come back to that maybe towards the end, but I would definitely be interested to hear if you think there are particular barriers that we also need to consider in this mix.
I mean, like in Portugal, I mean, what would you think? What's the typical barrier people say there?
Lack of skills and training. Maybe.
Where would I start?
Where would you start? Yep. And we did talk about earlier, that where do I turn to for help?
Yeah.
Stuff exists, but how do I find it?
What about Italy? Do you think?
I would say unsure how to get funding.
Finances.
You have to create a
Sure.
That,
Here in the
in
UK?
terms of perceived,
Sure.
not in terms of actual.
Yeah, of
But
course,
that's how
exactly.
people feel.
And that's why there is that balance between real and perceived. A lot of these are actually, there are solutions for them, but it's in terms of breaking down the way people think about it.
I think confidence is a big one that comes across.
Absolutely.
Especially with
Yeah, absolutely. And we hear the same comments from people in the Outset program every day, and these people are from a range of ages and backgrounds. Take Aisha Phelps, for example, who after years of abusive relationships and substance addictions, as well as being thrown out of home, found herself feeling alone and unsupported. Or Alex Secker, who after being made redundant and unable to access benefits, sought to turn his passion for film and photography into a business, but had no idea how to go about doing it. Stu Williams, whose visual impairment made accessing traditional employment difficult and meant that he required specialised support to navigate the new terrain of starting his new venture. And Star Kachara, who had the business idea but lacked the competence, the skills and the money to transform it into a living, breathing entity. All of these are fairly common barriers to employment, and so now I'd like to walk you through the Outset approach and the ways in which we help people break through these obstacles. Outset's mission is to provide a combination of personal and enterprise development, delivered from a starting point of possibility for every client. Our program is totally inclusive across all elements, whether it be in the venues and locations we choose, the timings we work within, the language and content we deliver, and the fact that we're a completely non-profit program, fully funded by a range of partners, allowing us to provide all local citizens free access to our services. Whilst our ultimate output is the creation of business and jobs, we're much more than a business startup program, and this is best captured in our ethos. Outset is about growing the individual. This is the guiding principle that informs and underpins all elements of our program, with the key takeaway being that you can't expect people to behave differently if you don't give them the tools to think differently first. So what does the Outset program actually look like? The Outset model follows a fairly chronological business startup journey, and whilst each local version of the program is tailored to meet the specific goals and challenges of that area, at its core the content remains the same. Initially, we work with the various partners involved to define goals and areas of focus, before commencing a targeted awareness and demand generation campaign executed through grassroots community outreach and using tailored marketing communications. We hold informal sessions to educate people about what we offer, and if they decide to proceed, lead them through a series of pre-start development workshops. These vary from personal development workshops aimed at building confidence and self-esteem to more skills-based business seminars aimed at helping individuals transform their ideas into viable business models. Clients can attend a variety of marketing and finance workshops, receive one-on-one help finalising their business plan, and also gain access to our home learning interactive tool, Outset Online, which includes over 140 video tutorials, as well as additional tools and resources. We also offer tailored access to finance support, helping people to create strong loan applications. And this is where I guess my presentation nicely overlaps with Angela. And as a certified UK government startup loan partner, we can now provide direct access to funding and post-loan mentoring, bridging that critical gap from business idea to reality. Once the business is launched, we commence a range of post-start options, from networking events to mentoring and sustainability and growth workshops, all designed to bolster the confidence of the new business owner in those crucial early months. Now, with this understanding of the Outset model in mind, I now want to look at 5 key principles that inform both the creation and delivery of every Outset program. The first 3 principles relate to our focus, the partnerships we create, and the financing models we employ, and enable us to build a sustainable structure that can effectively reach and support our clients. Then I'll look at some specific ways in which the delivery of Outset is differentiated from other enterprise support programs in order to actively remove the barriers that our clients face in entering self-employment. Finally, I'll review the ultimate value and meaning of our approach, measuring it in terms of how effective, inclusive, replicable, and scalable it is. Whilst we offer support to individuals throughout our contract areas, we do ultimately have a social focus in mind. Our work through Outset targets some of the most deprived areas in the UK, especially inner city areas where the complex mix of physical, social, and economic deprivation, low skills and worklessness combine to yield increased crime rates, poorer health and life expectancy, reduced mobility, social tensions, and lower levels of aspiration and ambition. Outset is charged to bring about social change, enabling these individuals to find a sustainable and viable alternative to unemployment and dependency on government benefits, and create new futures for themselves and their families through enterprise. Another critical part of our program is the dynamic partnerships we create, spanning a range of sectors. On average, each Outset project has a partnership network of around 30 to 50 stakeholders, starting from statutory government bodies at various levels, through to public sector bodies like social housing organisations and local job centres. And these partnerships are interspersed through the initial program and then set up and then throughout its delivery. the involvement of corporates and other private sector entities, driven by a commitment to corporate social responsibility, delivers outset access to both funding, resources, and even in-kind support in the form of mentoring and coaching. And our work with a range of third sector specialists, from drug and alcohol rehabilitation centres to groups specifically aimed at supporting excluded youth, ensures the diffusion of expertise and genuine access to individuals who may benefit from our program. Last but not least, our work with the education sector provides an essential two-way stream, removing reluctance to formal education by encouraging individuals to see the value and opportunity that comes from vocational training, as well as literacy, numeracy, and IT skills development. We also support individuals in taking this learning off the page and into the real world. These partnerships create connections that ultimately strengthen and enrich our offering. But of course, all of this is contingent on our ability to accessing the funding we need to deliver the program. And with budgets tightening across the board, we've had to become experts in financial innovation and integrating a range of sources, from government to private and philanthropic, and in various forms like capital, revenue, and in-kind support. Match funding is an increasingly important element of our funding model, and we work closely with the corporate sector in this pursuit, and in fact have just recently set up the Outset Foundation as a charity via which to facilitate these relationships. This is not just about capturing money to do good in local communities, but also about ensuring a richer, longer-term focus that has enough money to make a real impact. So now let's look at some of the specific strategies we use through Outset and the ways in which these both are different and more effective at removing barriers to enterprise. When it comes to creating awareness, 3 of the key strategies that differentiate us from other enterprise providers include, firstly, the way that we talk to individuals within our program in order to change the way they think about self-employment. We deliberately reject labels like hard to reach and disadvantaged, as these imply that individuals are somehow resistant or disinterested in change. When classified in this way, it can be difficult for people to develop any kind of self-esteem that isn't motivated by the wrong feelings, and our clients gain confidence from the way in which we talk to them. We don't just sit back and wait for the phone to ring. We proactively go out into the community and embed ourselves within the neighbourhood, whether through door knocking and leaflet drops, stands at community events, or distribution of materials through partners, local job centres, libraries, or community houses. And we deliberately choose our staff from the local areas, handpicking people who are motivated to change others' lives and make a difference in the community. We focus on being approachable and accessible at all costs, avoiding the suited and booted look, and instead wearing everyday clothing and engaging individuals on a personal level that considers the various hurdles that individual might face. And all of these factors support us in removing negative perceptions and ensure people know there is an avenue of support available. In terms of delivery, we aim to address low self-esteem and lack of skills throughout and deliver our courses in a stairway-like structure, supporting clients from underneath as they progress and helping them to take it one step at a time or at a pace they feel comfortable with. Our braided approach that combines a focus on personal development and business skills ensures that we're always nurturing our clients from both sides and delivering individual growth alongside their business development. And we employ a range of different formats, whether group workshops, one-on-one mentoring, or online support, in order to meet the individual needs of our clients. And if you think back to the exercise we did at the start of this talk, you'll get an insight into the types of ways in which we work with people to help open their minds. Ultimately, our goal is to empower the individual, and this approach allows us to ensure truly client-centred delivery. Finally, when it comes to removing the fear associated with both accessing and managing finance, we take the approach of strengthening confidence through knowledge. We integrate discussions about finance from day one of our program and change the way that clients think about finance. By helping them build sustainable business plans that reduce risk for lenders, we change the conversation from one that is focused on going into debt to one focused on making safe and secure investments, teaching our clients to trial and test options and adopt flexible responses. Ultimately, we support these individuals in securing and managing the funds they receive. And in this way, we use confidence as the key vehicle for including individuals on the mainstream finance ladder. So now let's talk impact. How effective is the Outset program? In just 4 years, we've engaged over 15,000 individuals, generating over 3,160 businesses and even more jobs, with some businesses creating additional employment opportunities. These businesses are estimated to have produced approximately $21 million in gross value added and tax receipts paid back into the community. And by helping many of the individuals out of employment and off benefits, we estimate an additional 22 million in benefit savings. Overall, this has delivered approximately 197% return on investment. But ultimately, the value of our program lies in bolstering local communities, and we're in the process of carrying out further research across the various programs to provide even greater insight into the overall social return Outset delivers. When it comes to our goal of social inclusion, Outset engages and empowers a range of demographic profiles, from the 66% who were previously unemployed before engaging with Outset, through to the 36% who are under 25 or over 50. We have tailored approaches for working with each of these demographics based on specific challenges they may face or needs and requirements that they might have. Outset Online is one example of how we're able to more effectively serve people with physical disabilities or single parents that may be unable to attend workshops in person. And finally, we've proven our ability to be both scalable and replicable. We've worked amongst other areas in both isolated rural towns and deprived coastal communities. We deliver projects in a wide range of sizes and formats, depending on an area's needs, although it is essential to note that we see a direct correlation between investment and impact. We, as previously mentioned, our Outset Online e-learning platform increases our reach and accessibility in remote areas, and also allows us to more effectively support people who are housebound, whether through caring responsibilities or difficulties with mobility. And for funders, it provides an alternative option for white labelling. Finally, as part of our overall sustainability commitment, 50% of any income we earn from our capacity building and consultancy work is reinvested into the Outset Foundation to ensure the future replication of the Outset model in new areas. In summary, I'd like to return to the case studies we introduced at the beginning, because all of these individuals are testament to the strength and potential of the Outset program in overcoming barriers to employment. Aisha has gone on to create a mobile hairdressing unit and has come off drugs, and exemplifies Outset's ability to reduce isolation, support people in overcoming their personal skeletons, and deliver a positive impact on the community. Alex has his own video production studio and is working with a range of local businesses, showcasing the important role Outset plays in creating connections and setting people on a pathway to success. Stu, who now runs Red Roof Community Radio Station with over 30 live shows and 50 volunteer staff, is an excellent example of Outset's focus on delivering a tailored program that strives to meet the needs of every individual. And Star, who now has her own training school for developing organic and natural skincare products, is testament to the way in which Outset shares knowledge and expertise in order to help individuals find the confidence to build their own sustainable and profitable businesses. We've certainly found the Outset approach an extremely effective way of overcoming barriers, both real and perceived, to enterprise in the UK. And I hope that this presentation has given you a few thought starters to take home to your local communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. It was really interesting. Trip over. Any questions for Jane?
Yeah.
Yes.
I should start by apologizing because I'm not, the actual question is not entirely clear in my mind, so I'm not going to be that effective into putting it into words. I always have the feeling that there are like two big categories of entrepreneurial initiatives by young people, like the self-employment that comes out of desperation sometimes, so to speak. This is quite common in Italy. I mean, people cannot find a job because the job market is in disaster conditions, so they think, why not go for self-employment? And that actually not makes an entrepreneur of yourself. On the other hand, we have what we call startups everywhere else in Europe, but maybe here when this is your own language and sometimes we would misuse it. In Italy, for instance, startups are those business ideas that have a high-tech character and high growth potential normally.
Sure. Yeah.
My question and the thought that I have in my mind is whether these two different ideas of business, these two different models need different support, meaning that you make a distinction at the very beginning, and so with actual, what we call startups everywhere else in Europe, don't get the social touch because they're kind of fast track to business.
Absolutely.
Whereas on the other side you get this people with issues.
Totally.
And you take care of those issues, and maybe the business touch comes like a secondary concern.
I think
I'm
that's
sure I was not clear, but
I think that's really, and I think that is definitely comes down to the cultural usage of the word. And I think our program is certainly got a real focus on supporting the social aspects and people that therefore need that additional level of support. We do have the capacity, for example, if you're based in Bristol and you come in, anyone in Bristol is eligible to access our services. So technically, if you came and you had this, more of a tech-based startup solution requirement, then it would be possible for you to still receive support through Outset. That might therefore be focused purely on the business skills. So it is possible for you to go through the program as and when you require it. It's not, you don't have to have all of those components, and that's where I suppose we pride ourselves on having quite a tailored approach to looking at each individual's needs and addressing them accordingly. But yeah, I think absolutely there is an important distinction to be made there between the journey of on the one hand these kind of more very up and coming future kind of amazing businesses and people who are actually creating what might in the early stages be quite a small and traditional kind of business, whether it be hairdressing or whatever, but it's still making an impact and a change in their lives.
Yeah, which raises a fundamental problem. I was speaking to a woman recently from Bulgaria. It's the same problem they had because they had a hard time getting financing for people with modest business proposals that were valid, that would have been in the black. But there was people, be the equivalent of a person having a salary for themselves, or a small family business, and they were floatable as business opportunity, but they couldn't get any interest because the ultimate profit
wasn't there for
level
them.
wasn't.
Where we've had some traction with that recently is as a government startup partner, we've got the ability to give access to funding up to £25,000. And the startup loans in the UK are designed for people who have been rejected from traditional sources. So whether they've been rejected for the fact that it's a non-viable business plan, they have a poor credit history, or the bank just doesn't see it as important enough to invest in, we're actually then able to review the viability of that person's kind of case. And in most cases, even if they do have a poor credit history, if we feel that there is enough kind of support and viability within their plan, then we're able to kind of still deliver the loan. Yeah, Matthias.
Do you offer a different approach for different age groups? I saw the group of under 25 and over 50 years.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, to some extent that is dictated by the individual kind of relationships that are then built through the advisors. So we don't necessarily offer within the Bristol program, for example, we don't specifically always offer an under 25 thing. And actually we find that our clients don't like that approach. They don't want to be segregated from everyone else. However, having said that, there's a couple of different things to say there. We did do a trial, kind of a pilot program in 2012 where it was a study purely based on needs and 16 to 25 to 4-year-olds. And it was in Bristol, and working in partnership with a charity organisation that had a specific relationships with youth already, we partnered with them in order to deliver a more tailored service. And as a result of that, some of the actual structural changes that then originated was that we looked at offering different sized spaces because the youth wanted to be involved in a lot more social group work style activities. We had to be a lot more flexible in terms of the timings and letting people register late in the program, because a key focus for us was that people would often share it with their group of friends and someone would want to turn up at the last minute. And for some traditional programs, if you're not equipped to kind of handle that, then that's not possible. So we had to remain quiet. We wanted that kind of flow-on effect, and as a result, we saw a real uplift in numbers as we kind of progressed because we had people bringing along friends as they saw value in the program. So there was, I think, from some of the activity we've done in that space, we definitely observed different kind of requirements and needs. When it comes to working with over 50s, it might be things that, like, these people are probably likely to have worked within employment, in some other form of employment. They're likely to have qualifications of some description and a different type of experience that people who are fresh out of school might not have. In which case, they're going to potentially need different focus in terms of the business content that's provided, and potentially, you know, portrayed in a slightly different manner as well. So I think we absolutely take those kind of differences in terms of working with demographics into account, but it doesn't mean that we necessarily offer a completely segmented program.
Yeah, would you say that you would reject a template approach to people?
Absolutely, and I think that's where it is. The core content is the same. The structure of the model remains the same, but it's in terms of how that advisor, in working with the individual clients and recognising the needs that they have, adapts the program. And that's why I guess we've been sort of had such strong results with our program, because at the moment we've got 6 different outlets operating in the southwest of England, and each of those programs has a very slightly different kind of approach to it, based on the deprived wards within that area and the specific social challenges that those individuals are facing. So, you know, we do have the flexibility within our program in order to adjust and modify as we need to.
That's brilliant, thank you. Very comprehensive. Yes?
Yeah, sure.
Right. Just to answer your initial question about the barriers.
Yeah.
One that we have also in our country, I think globally speaking, it's the fear beyond the depth. It's the fear of failure.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's some sort of, I don't know, ostracization.
Yeah, sure. And actually, that's an important part of our program. We make it a kind of an essential component of the program that if we are working with someone and it becomes apparent that they're really not suited to self-employment, we are motivated to kind of support them in finding other options, and we certainly do not encourage them to continue. There's no, you know, we're not kind of, whilst we might have targets within an area, we don't want to create unsustainable businesses, because in the long run that's not going to deliver anything back. So we would work with those individuals though, hopefully because of the mix of personal development and business skills, they actually do leave ready for any sort of employment, and if self-employment's that option, we have the kind of options in place to support them, but otherwise we also then direct them through to other services.
Then another question that I had is that we are currently implementing I'm from a regional development agency, and we are going to have financial instruments to support the so-called social economy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have recently launched our social economy juridic law. Okay, and we don't have the figure of social enterprise. Social enterprise. So from your presentation and from Angela's presentation, and this morning about who was the case?
The Growth Accelerator.
The lifestyle and company. I don't remember his name. He also said that he didn't know he was a social entrepreneur until recently, 1 or 2 years, because there's in Portugal there's a gap because we don't have that figure. That figure of law, and we have these so-called objectives from the European Union to support social enterprise. And from your presentation, I can see that you have a scope on inclusive growth. And your examples from local people that you have supported are those examples. But what is the definition of a social enterprise? And can it be profitable? And
this is actually something we've been struggling with a little bit internally as well, because there seems to be a proliferation of definitions regarding social enterprises, and the lack of kind of understanding means that people are going out and talking about the fact that they have a social focus and then labelling that we're therefore a social enterprise, versus others who go, well, no, you have to be completely not-for-profit, you have to kind of have all these various things. I suppose in terms of how we define it, we consider ourselves as supporting social stuff, but not necessarily.
Your group.
No, YTKO. So YTKO Group is different because YTKO Group is actually a private sector company, and that's where Outset we have the foundation will be a charitable organisation officially registered as charity. And in terms of definition, I think that's actually something that is a really important thing that needs to be addressed across the board. so that when we are talking about these conversations, we're actually contributing to something.
We do actually have a, so it goes back to the days of the Department of Trade and Industry, what is now PIS, their formal definition for a social enterprise in the UK, which caused us no end of problems, was a business that is trading but is primarily reinvesting its profits back into social or community benefits. Now, what a lot of people took that as being, as if you have a private company registered with shares, as long as over 50% of the profits and revenues from that company was being reinvested back into the community, it was a social enterprise. Now, that opened up a whole can of worms, because all of a sudden scout groups were social enterprises, as were private consultants who were basically were reinvesting, contributing a certain amount of money per annum to charity and stuff like that. So we have had, in actual fact, perhaps if we talk a bit offline, because we've had these conversations, we've had the same nightmares, and we carried out a mapping exercise to look at all of the social enterprises in Thurrock, and what we got back was not what we were expecting.
In practice, there are about half a dozen definitions that people use. You get, like, is it for profit? Is it not for profit? Is it like a CSR exercise of a large company? Is it the primary focus or secondary focus? What's that? And there are about half a dozen.
Our National Statistical Institute, who deals with the data, has recently launched the social economy account. And when you analyze that, it's growing in terms of jobs and importance in our, but when you analyze the institutions that are there, a high percentage, it's totally dependent on public funding. So I don't know if we can call this an economical sector or that boosts the country, because, and we are at a crisis now, and our central government, like most of other countries, is cutting the budgets to these companies, and they are suffering a lot. So they need to lots of other other financial instruments.
I think,
but I don't think that's because this huge dependency on public funding. I don't think that should be. They probably will get the funding for so-called social enterprises in the next period, in programming period. But I don't think this is the concept of this.
Well, that's the thing, is that there are different concepts. That's my point. Like, that is one of the definitions that's out there. Is that, like, it can be kind of like a outsourcing of public services, for example. That's one of, and there are just these different definitions that are currently in use.
I think a few years ago, charities that hit a lot in this country, charity, all of a sudden they were starting to hear the word sustainability, and actually having to bid for that, not given the funding, but having to bid for the funding, and the people in the organisation weren't necessarily the business leaders with the skills, with the confidence, with the knowledge to do that. And I think that created a big change in the way that people have to think about it as a business, like a school. And I think that's a change that people have to make and go through.
I think Italy kind of stands as a case by itself, because we have a long tradition of cooperatives. So in a way, social enterprises and cooperatives come to be more or less the same thing. The focus is a lot on your business model, rather than just the kind of services or goods that you deliver. So from what I understand, it was, the issue was probably more straightforward in Italy than in other countries. The fact that we now have specific legislation was actually something that was welcome, because in a way it was also long due. So our experience, I think, is slightly different to this extent. So
I think there's more pressure and more expectations now on outputs or impact as well, whereas before they were the things that you do and they were things that make a difference, but now they expect to see figures, as you showed there. What's the impact? What's the outcome?
Absolutely.
What did you do, and how did we spend that money?
The problem with that sometimes is you get, the tail wags the dog, because you get people drifting into objectives because of the logic of a palpable indicator. Indicators are fine, but instead of the actual need, we could do it this way because we could have these indicators and that would be easy to demonstrate, as opposed to where actual social or ethical need is.
Could we just, any more questions for Jane? Because I know Jane's got another event to attend later on. In which case, thank you very much again for that.
I wanted to,
How long are you training? How long is your program when you?
They really vary. It depends on the funding. So, for example, in Cornwall, we've been operating. Cornwall launched initially in 2009, and it's still in operation. So, I guess we work in phases. So, the first contract might have been 2 years, which is kind of a good amount of time to enable you to actually start to see some change. But now we've been in place for moving on to 5 years. So I think we've also just launched Bournemouth, which is our first combination of public and private sector funding in order to deliver the outset model. And so that one is a 1-year contract, and then it will be reviewed based on the results. So it really, the scale of each project can very much vary in terms of how we're doing. We've also just launched another initiative, which is basically a partnership with Frederick's Foundation, a loan-based charity here in the UK, and we're working with Frederick's. We're offering sort of a specialised service to go into housing associations and work with their residents. And again, that program can be modified and adjusted from to meet their budgets effectively.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
I've got a few, just a piece of reading material that we have produced, which is all about how we work with social inclusion. So I can also send around digital copies after the seminar, but thought I might as well distribute it since I've printed them.
What's her role? Is that the definition of her job?
We have a business developer, effectively, Virginie Bunel, who's based in Greece and actually is able to come and meet with anyone, and we are able to export our services effectively, whether in a consultancy capacity or kind of coming and actually delivering a program.
Just because she's French, so you might.
So I can absolutely put you in touch with Virginie. Have you got a business card? But yeah, please feel free to contact me if you do have any other questions. We're very happy to.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again.
We'll go straight on now, if we can, to Graham, Rubbish, and Susan.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll try and talk a little slower for those of us that don't have English as a first language. Graham Clark, Susan Rom, my business partner, sitting over here in the pink coat. I shall be leading most of the presentation. Susan will be chipping in and out as is required. Unlike Angela, we have 100 years between us supporting small business. 80 years are Susan's and 20 are mine. But we'll probably discuss that figure a little later. Interestingly, just before I go into the presentation, one thing that is really, really common that's coming from all of these presentations, and when we start with Andrew at the beginning, we go on to the German experience, we go into outset here, is that all of the issues, all of the problems are completely pan-European. The things that change, the innovation, the best practice, the language or the terminology that we use in our individual countries to articulate all of this, but everything's the same. It's quite interesting that these kind of programs bring together all of the common issues, and I think that's one of the benefits of these transnational projects, is the bringing together of the issues and the complex, often complex solutions to it. So, and I think that we'll find that in the presentation that we're going to give you here, is that there'll be a lot of similarity to the issues that you will find in your individual countries. The only thing that will change is probably the context, the application, and the terminology. But pretty much, we're talking about the same things, which are quite often affected by the culture and the disposition in our particular countries. Just a very short piece about us. Up here I've just put a list of points. First of all, we are a business development consultancy based here in the county of Essex. We work very, very closely with our public sector colleagues in Thurrock, but also we help and support other public sector and private businesses in the county of Essex. Amongst the kind of work that we typically would carry out here in Thurrock are things that enable learning and development opportunities to take place within the Thurrock area. We provide some business-focused workshops for SMEs within the Thurrock area. We provide mentoring to support business growth, again in the Thurrock area, and the concept of coaching and mentoring, the availability of that kind of support is really, really important if we're going to move forward, not just with small business generally, but also the concept of supporting youth, pre-startup, younger people, etc., etc. We also provide small business support on one-to-one, so that may not just be younger or youth, but also business from all sort of walks of life, all kind of sectors, ranging from pre-startup right the way through to businesses that actually have some kind of maturity going into 20 and 30 years. At one time, in every SME, they need to go back to the community, to the business community, to business consultancy for mentoring, to look maybe for solutions and support. So that's something else that we provide. We also provide grant advice and support, but not in the same kind of way that Angela does. Angela does it in a much bigger way, but what we do here with Thurrock is to provide some support for their Tiger loan program. So that was the 0% finance program that Angela was talking about. And a very important thing is that amongst everything else that we do up here at the top, we do a lot of brokering of introductions for peer-to-peer support. Because one of the really good things about SME, about small business, is that there's a lot of information, a lot of availability of support mechanisms on peer-to-peer level. And recognising that and being able to articulate that and to connect people is important, really, really important. So that's the kind of work that, in particular, that Susan and I carry out here in Thurrock. The kind of thrust that we're putting into the presentation today, first of all, is mentoring. Secondly, is peer-to-peer support groups, and thirdly, is small business support. And the first one that I just wanted to go through is, if you like, a list of 10 practical aspects for supporting mentoring. Now, may I ask, just before we start, how many of you are actually at the moment participating in some kind of mentoring relationship, either as a mentor or as a mentee? Okay? So there's a few over here on the left, nothing on the right. Okay? How many in the past have participated in a mentoring relationship, either as a mentor or as a mentee? So, loads on the left, nothing on the right. So we need to be talking to you guys over here, because you're really, really missing great opportunities, either to be supported or indeed to support. And may I ask you, madam, I'm really going to put you on the spot here. Can I ask you why you've never participated in a mentoring relationship?
I'm afraid because my job is that of project manager. So the reason why I'm here is because I belong to a company that actually does mentoring, but it's not really my job. Of course, it's probably because I never looked at myself come from the outside of myself, and there are probably features of my job that I could put at somebody else's use. So I just never thought of it.
So what we've got here is we've got some kind of barrier actually to mentoring and to the value that mentoring could bring either to you personally or indeed to the organisation that you work within. And these are some of the issues, the practical issues that we come down to when we're actually talking about mentoring and mentoring schemes. And all of these issues here, these practical aspects for supporting mentoring, are the real things that affect us every day. But also, more importantly, these are the things that affect every single business, whether you're a business, whether you're in the public sector or whether you're in the private commercial sector. These things in mentoring are absolutely so important. For example, the very first, give good reasons for people to participate and stay participating in a mentoring program. So the lady here doesn't have a really good reason for participating in a mentoring program.
I guess it's just lack of imagination. Is that a good reason enough?
But also probably because you don't see the value of doing it. So it's not only being a mentor, but it's actually about being a mentee. In other words, being mentored by somebody. So here I am, at 61 years old-ish, having been both a mentor and a mentee, actually all through my working life. And having experienced the benefit of that in a much broader way. Never been able to turn around and say, well, actually, mentoring is no good. It doesn't bring anything to us, but it does. It brings a lot to us. And these practical aspects are so important.
I think it's the third last one that make it easy to play. A lot of people would, on the face of it, well, sure, I would, I guess, but what would I do? I mean, just walk out the street and say I want to mentor someone? Like, if you give them a...
Yeah, absolutely. But the real aspects of this mentoring, the value that can be brought to not just this transnational project, but actually to youth unemployment, to youth employment, to youth entrepreneurialism in particular, you know, this is also vitally important. Absolutely vital. Blowing up the mentoring myths. Look at the myths that surround mentoring. You know, the myths perhaps are that men can't mentor women. The myths are that maybe women can't mentor men. The myths are that I can't be mentored by someone that's younger than myself. Many, many myths. But actually what they are is they're barriers. They're actually barriers to progression and to people being much bigger and businesses being much bigger. Think like a dating service. What makes me unique? Because if you want to have a really good mentoring scheme that's going to work, you've got to think about the participants and what's in it for them. And it's like a dating scheme because the mentor and the mentees actually have to have a match. They have to actually have some kind of connection here, here and here. Doesn't mean love. Doesn't mean that we need to take that relationship onto another level, but we've got to have a connection. There's a chap laughing over here. So he's obviously got a vision in his mind of this mentoring relationship going on. But you've got to have a match. You've absolutely got to have a match in some kind of way.
I'm also laughing because, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, dating. I fell in love with Prince Charming, and then I ended up with my husband. So,
okay, he's not here, is he? So that's good. We won't, okay.
I mean, you know, like doing the peacock type of show when you're on a date, and then at the end of the day you go back to your usual self, and
you're a little bit disappointed. Okay, well we can talk about that later. We can mentor you on you know, we'll do some one-to-many mentoring. So we'll sort that out for you. I'm sure that we can find someone that will, you know. Yeah. Okay. Other things, you know, teach people how to mentor and how to be a mentee. You know, some people believe that maybe these are barriers, and they are absolutely barriers because people need to have skills. What are the expectations between the mentor and the mentee? We need to understand that. These kind of aspects, again, come back into these kind of projects that we're looking at here. That if we want to give younger people an opportunity, we want to give them a chance, then we've got to be able to deal with these kind of issues. And more importantly, we need to put schemes in place that deals with these as well. Make them commit. Well, we don't actually say, right, we will commit sign here. But what we do, we need to have a scheme. We need to have availability of schemes and content that is actually going to excite them. What's going to rock their boat? What's going to turn them on? What's going to give them the thing that says, yeah, I really believe in this. I want to be a mentee, or I'd like to be a mentor, whatever. So we need to make sure that we cover that as well. We also need to mentor around specific goals and outcomes, because if we go on a journey and we don't have a destination, we're never actually going to know the kind of route that we need to take. But more importantly, we're never going to know when we get there. Okay, and there's a lot of that in business life, isn't there? We talk about business plans, we talk about planning process, business process, this kind of thing that you sir will go through with your clients in Germany. So why wouldn't we have that in a mentoring relationship as well? And these are the kind of things that need to be agreed. And actually, in a mentoring program, one of the very, very first things is to make sure that you have a mentoring agreement, so that each understands not just what they're going to get, but more importantly, what they're going to give. So these things are really important. As Ian suggested, make it easy to play. Would you like to just expand on that, Ian?
For example, like this idea of helping other people or being helped. I mean, if you put it to people broadly like that, people would get it, I guess. Yeah. I mean, if you put like the dating service, in English we'd say that, maybe in other language they might say, a good fit or something. But all those things come together. But how do I do that? I might have some time to donate up to a point. I'm not going to dedicate my whole life to working all that out. Like someone's got to offer me some kind of setup I can plug myself into.
May I comment on that? From what you're saying and from the fact that you've been on this mentoring business for a long, long time, I get the idea that mentoring is actually been in place here in the UK much longer than in Italy. So this makes me wonder whether it is actually something that has to do with the culture as well, with the idea of citizenship that you may have over here and we may not have in Italy. There's kind of a social responsibility maybe here on that individual expressed rather than
yes.
I'm not just asking,
I might be saying to that, but keep in mind that mentoring also is heavily developed in the private sector. Big companies,
Yeah, so maybe it's because we don't have a lot of big companies and those that we have.
Well, bigger and not so big. The point is that it's a private sector thing too. A lot of it was more articulated in the private sector and transferred more.
And when we look at the globalisation of mentoring, of course, a lot of it originally came out of the States.
Right.
And it's transferable. It's kind of come across the the ocean. But mentoring, corporate mentoring, has been around, and corporate coaching in the UK has been around for a long while. But it isn't just commercially driven organisations.
But the point is, it's not just about like social charity and stuff. It's a practice that has a
but what I meant is more, not that it just has to come from charities, but it definitely I think comes from the idea that you have to give something back to the community. Which is probably not such an urgent, it hasn't been such an urgent feelings on the part of Italian entrepreneurs or experts or whatever.
Sure, but in the terms of commercially driven organisations, then the drivers can be much more different. They can, for example, be about driving organisational culture. It can be about driving profit. It can be about driving engagement. So, there are a lot of different aspects surrounding mentoring programs, depending on the kind of drivers and the context that you want from it. So, for example, in a public body, the drivers for mentoring could be very much about
younger people being shepherded through the process to in some way develop them more as officers, as not just employees, but as officers of a particular council, being helped by older, maybe more professional or proficient people within a department to understand their role more broadly. So the drivers for mentoring can be different, and that's why the journey is so important in terms of the roadmap, because it's the end result that you want to understand, so you know that where you start from. And in commercial companies, as I say, the drivers can be much more different. They're driven by profit or whatever, social inclusion, whatever. Also important that everybody's progress is tracked within a mentoring scheme, because quite often, and what's been found, particularly in the UK in the commercial sector, is that mentoring programs start up in good order and then just dissipate and disappear because there's been no tracking, there's been no lead, no headway in terms of bringing them forward. So tracking is really, really important. And ownership in an organisation as well. Ownership of who owns a mentoring program, and generally it has to have some kind of corporate lead, because quite often corporately that's where the funding is going to come from, that's where the commitment to give resources is going to be led from. And then the last sort of point that I've got, which is the kind of practical aspect for supporting mentoring, is that when you've done all of that, start at the top and do it all again. Because it is a cycle. It's not a list, start at one and finish at the bottom. It's a cycle. And providing that you can manage these practical aspects, then you certainly would have a very good mentoring scheme, but more importantly, a mentoring scheme that certainly is going to support the kind of transnational project that we're seeing here, talking about youth entrepreneurialism, youth unemployment, etc., etc. So that's my first slide, looking at practical aspects for supporting mentoring projects. The second slide that I wanted to run through as well was that setting up peer group for mentoring and practical advice. Now, again, one of the big themes for me that sitting over here on the side and listening to all the debate is that wherever we are in Europe, pan-European is an issue of support, advice, signposting, showing people where to go for support and advice, and those kind of support aspects. It's exactly the same when we're setting up group mentoring and also providing practical advice for people that need mentoring or coaching. And these points here, for example, what good practice have we got to allow participants input into scheme development? So if we try and set up a peer-to-peer group support, but we don't involve those that are going to be involved in it, are we likely to get any buy-in? The answer is that we probably wouldn't. So peer-to-peer, in particular, we need to focus in very clearly on who the peer-to-peer group is, or groups, and we need to include them at a very early stage when we're setting up those kind of schemes. We need to be clear also who's going to be mentored and why. So we need to know about the scope of the project that we're developing. And again, it's a little bit like the roadmap. If we want to know where we're going, we need to know where the start is. Well, as part of the journey, we need to know who actually is going to be on the bus on the journey. Who's going to be driving it? Who are going to be the passengers? Will they be getting off at certain points? Will people be getting on at certain points? That's really, really important.
You look a lot at two-way benefits for the mentor-mentee relationship.
Absolutely. Everything is with benefits. Everything is with benefits. Whatever we look at a mentoring program, there's got to be the quid pro quo. What is the benefit for both the mentor and the mentee and indeed the scheme in a much larger way. So we must have benefits.
But this is the thing that it's often not brought out as much, I think, as could be.
Absolutely, yeah. Quite often is that you'll find a mentoring scheme which is about matching, we'll match you with you, but then we don't know what the benefits are. We don't understand the benefits, we don't understand the greater...
Well, particularly for the mentor, because the idea of the benefit for the mentee, it's well, they're getting this support, right? But that the idea that goes in another direction can be also for public authorities, because, for example, it can be lots of ways, but for example, active aging, like where you're looking at retirees, like retired businessmen who are providing support.
Yeah.
There's also, I mean, this is active aging as well. So it's a two-way thing. Yeah? We had another one we're looking at in Spain, in Bilbao. It was to do with migrant women, and they were being mentored by migrant women from similar backgrounds, but who'd been there a long time and settled in, sort of would show them, sort of walk them through it. But then what it did a lot for the self-confidence of these other women, because they sort of made an audit of their own, what they'd achieved and what they'd done, and go, oh, it's true, and their own sense of self was affected by this.
Sure, absolutely.
And you're increasing your assets.
Absolutely. And that's about it. This is about increasing assets. It's about making sure that we add value. We add value both to the program, we add value to the individuals, and in the context maybe of a commercial organisation or business, we need to add value to that as well. It's all about adding value.
But in order to keep it like a win-win situation, I guess, selecting the mentors is even a harder job than, selecting the people, the benefiting from the scheme, I guess.
Absolutely. Next point. Absolutely. Qualities. Qualities required in peer support group, peer mentors. Not only at peer level, but also in a scheme where you've got mentors and mentees. We need to remember we said we were looking at a dating service. Okay, we'll just relate back to your experience with your husband. When you first met him, you had a shopping list. You remember the shopping list? Okay, list of points. And then you thought, actually, when you got the shopping back home, you thought, actually, I've left that one out of the bag. Where's the Tesco bag? I've left that one out of the bag.
I was stupid enough not to have a shopping list at the beginning. That's where the disappointment came.
So this is, I'm sure you're not that disappointed, but this is one. This is one where qualities are absolutely important, because at a later date, once we've started on either this peer-to-peer group or the mentoring, we don't really have a chance to go back and revisit the shopping list. We've got to know from the beginning, what our expectations are from the shopping list, so that later we don't get disappointed. In a mentoring scheme, the disappointment will mean probably that the mentoring scheme will just fall apart. So really, really important that we discover what the qualities are. Yes, madam.
Just to add on the mentoring, I work in the learning disability service, so people with intellectual impairment, and we use peer mentors quite a lot, matching up people's interests and skills to support each other. And often one's got a high level skill and a low level in something else, so they end up helping each other, so they balance out what they can do and be more independent.
Yes, absolutely, and that's a really good point. That again, we must explode the myths in terms of mentoring, and we must also explode the myths in terms of peer-to-peer support as well. We mustn't assume that one must be higher than the other, or one must, because it's mutual. What's important is that we go back to the dating again. It's the match that's really, really important, and there's a sense here. But also, we are coming back to skills as well. There must be some skills, and there must be benefits for both. Really important. Recruitment and selection of peer mentors. Well, we've kind of been talking around that, haven't we? Your example is a good one of that. Make sure that we've got a proper scheme set out where we do recruit the correct kind of peers, peer-to-peer mentors, with the right skills for the right people. We've got to make sure that we've got induction and ongoing support. It's no good just throwing two people into a room, expecting them to, on their first date, to make it work, when perhaps it won't. So it's important again that the scheme is set up and that it gets proper induction. Evaluation, always evaluate, tease out the factors that provide the most difficult aspects. And quite often, with both mentoring schemes and peer-to-peer support, the little things, the niggly things that happen are not teased out. They're left in there. And what happens is that these little minute things on the side that are just nagging away become a great big issue, and they can really upset the relationships within the mentoring, the peer-to-peer sort of support. So that again is a kind of flash through, setting up a peer group for mentoring and for providing practical advice. Now, the two slides that I've been through are really, really important in terms of both the project that we're seeing here, the transnational project, but also most relevant for small business support in the way perhaps that we support Thurrock with their small business support, because all of these things are things that we deal with every time that we meet a small business. Because if a small business has come to the local authority, Thurrock Council in this case, it means that they need help, support or information in some way, shape or form. We may not get into the situation where we mentor them specifically. However, there are cases where we have done that. You know, we have somebody at the moment where we meet quite regularly and we mentor them as a result of some need within their small business. So both of these slides are really, really important in supporting a lot of different things. Practical advice on running a small business. Well, you know, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that this is the definitive list, because it's not. But what we find in terms of supporting small business in our consultancy across the county of Essex is that this list that I've got here is a good list of things that we regularly need to support small business with, almost on a day-to-day basis. And I suspect that if we were to turn that into a pan-European list, and we were to change the terminology, this would be pretty much a list that you would produce as well. Am I right or wrong?
Broadly, yeah.
You know, broadly, this is the kind of list. You know, if you Google small business support in France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, okay, you'd probably come up with a very, very similar list. But the importance of this list isn't just the things that are there. The importance of this list is actually its relativity to, again, this transnational project. Because when we're looking at younger people, when we're looking at youth, when we're looking at youth unemployment, these things, again, as we've said earlier, are the real big things that are going to hit you. The one on the bottom as well, entrepreneurs don't do structure and planning, so who does, is a real big issue for entrepreneurs across the world. Not just here in the UK, not just in France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, you know, wherever you go in the world, these are real big issues. So what we've got to be able to do is to be able to set up structures that allow this to happen. And where do we go for that? Where do we get the support? Where do we provide the signposting? Where do we provide the funding? All of the things that have been coming out today, this afternoon, in the discussions, where does this come from? The first one is probably the biggest step that any young person, any unemployed person, any small business, anybody that's thinking about a small business, overcoming your fears is the believe in themselves. And that is one of the biggest things that we do, I think, in our small business support, is actually, on some occasions, it's actually convincing people that they have the spirit inside them, that the idea that they've got is a good one, and that actually, on a step-by-step process, providing they do it properly, they can actually turn out what they've got to do. So this list here, as I say, practical advice on running a small business is going to be pan-European. And that's kind of just gone off the edge of the slide. But thank you. That's a quick sort of tour for our presentation. Are there any questions? I think we've done questions as we go. Angela, I didn't expect a question.
No, it's more general comment, really. The difference between mentoring and coaching. There's a fine line between mentoring and coaching, because most of the things on there you actually would do under coaching. I think, in my mind, I was trying to work out what that meant. I think it's clear when you get to peer-to-peer groups, because you're trying to get the peer-to-peer groups to drive it themselves and support them. I think when you look at mentoring and coaching, a mentor can sometimes be less proactive and be there for somebody, whereas a coach has to be more proactive in trying to drive it.
I think there's self-actualisation, actually empowerment.
But there's the line. It's quite. And sometimes there's a line between them both, and distinguishing that. They're very different schemes.
Sure. One of the big differences between mentoring and coaching is that coaching quite often will have some outcomes that a coachee will have to achieve, whereas mentoring quite often there aren't any outcomes. It's about the discussion. It's about the mentee thinking about things themselves, and as Angela said, it's not articulated in a bigger way. But for coaching, more often coaches will produce outcomes that the coachee needs to achieve. But there is a difference between mentoring and coaching.
From your last slide, I was actually wondering whether there might be kind of language issues. So sometimes we use English words without even understanding that completely. And sometimes we speak commission English, where you speak natural English. Anyway, so the first point that it was the make-believe type thing, that really sounds like coaching more than mentoring. It's really kind of partnering into setting kind of personal vision, and then once the vision is more or less focused on, then the mentoring things come into the picture, which is, at least to our according to our understanding, something that can be even more technical. Technical in terms of really connected to the core business, to marketing issues. But I think
that there is an overlap. They're not the same thing.
Not the same thing, but there is an overlap.
No, and they could. My understanding was they could come in at different stages of the process.
Absolutely. And of course, the other thing as well is that there are different models for mentoring and coaching as well. And depending on which model you pick up, means that you're going to have a different aspect. I mean, for example, in coaching, a lot you would use what we call the GROW model in the UK. I don't know whether that's a model that's used pan-European, but certainly it's a model that's used in the UK and certainly in America. But there are other models as well. So depending on the scheme, the model, etc., it can change. And again, that's why it's important that you need to know where you're going to be, so you know where to start. Because if we want to go from there to there, we need to have a roadmap for it, as we'll end up from there to there. So, and not achieve what we want to achieve. So understanding all of this is really, really important. But the aspects, the practical aspects that I've shown here for mentoring, they are for mentoring. Coaching is similar, but there may be other issues as well with coaching.
Interject there. Thanks for staying with us so far. We have actually got on the agenda a partner exchange and debate in which we will need to contribute some information that will get fed back into the JobTown machine, presumably, and will come out with something. So you've all got a part to play. If there's any burning questions for Graham, we can take them now. But if there's no burning questions, I'd like to thank Graham very much for his presentation. And we've got, so we've just got a little bit of work to do. We're probably slightly late, but we might get interrupted. Angela, did you mention that you had these on a slide?
I did.
Thank you very much. So basically the job, the work that we have to do is each JobTown partner should briefly present its situation, 3 to 5 minutes. I think we can probably topics at the end of the session in relation to one or two of the following themes, and choose one or two most important problems and challenges they would like to address in future in relation to, and the bullet points are alternative funding for startups, advice services for startups, how to reach people who want to start businesses and let them know about existing support services and funding options. What is the role of local authorities in business support and funding? How can they be involved to support this? Goodness, it sounds like
that's the next thing.
Some really difficult essay questions in that. Right. So, shall we pick an area to begin with? Who's feeling brave and positive? Would you like to start?
Yes.
So the challenges. First of all, identify two of the most important problems and challenges involved in this list, and then identifying the answers.
Did you want just a quick recap on a couple of the things? Your answers are tomorrow, so want
actually thinking about it, I think we'll come back to these because I can't read my own thing. But I think this is more about internally our own areas feeding back into this process. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone that knows more about JobTown than me on this.
Supposed to.
Okay.
So you want this is the rapporteur function now, right?
It's number two, partnership. I think with all these so much information today, probably
I
gets
think
time.
there was so much to come to general.
Yeah, you pick each partner, but this is like the locality, so Thurrock, Enfield, etc., right?
Yes.
You do a presentation of your situation, but you have to pick one or two of these themes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's up to each you would know.
Yeah. So maybe one, if you think of one, you can't think of one of those things that immediately
It
hits
speaks
out.
more to you.
Yeah, it speaks more to you.
And then prepare a short explanation of your situation with that.
Yeah, of course I have to here to represent the city, whereas I'm from an innovation agency. So the thing is that it's the role of the local authorities in business support and funding. I would pick that one because the issue with cities in Italy is that they have a role in addressing local social issues, and the job market is definitely a social issue in itself, although it has to do with the business environment. It turns into social issue if it's not thriving. So it's definitely something that cities need to take care of. But at the same time, they don't have an institutional mandate to actively work for the local economic development. They don't have a mandate to ensure that the local economic environment is innovative. So they basically do not have budget to allocate for innovation, to support startups. But if they don't, and the job market being in the condition that it is due to a crisis that is global, then they're between the how do you say that the anvil and the hammer kind of situation. So it's actually the main issue is their institutional role and the lack of specific budget to be able to effectively work on the side of making the local innovation environment be lively. I don't know what
I think to address the socialists that don't have the mandate to influence that on the budgets for innovation to drive that.
They should keep to the social part of it, but if you don't really work on the side of innovation and startups, then you're ineffective.
I think that's a good point. Enfield.
Sorry,
Portugal. Anybody like to? Yes.
So, in Algeria, we are already working in this area for 4 years, and we already have a network of partners, financing partners. We have an investment fund of the municipality of Aveiro, which we already supported 3 new business. We have a microcredit, a bank with us. We have a crowdfunding in Portugal, a massive mob, and we also have a Microcredit National Association that they are working with us in order to finance the partners. And it was very important to listen to what Prem said, because we want to create a mentoring network, so it was really important to hear from you. And that's it, we support the entrepreneurs in diverse ways. We have already training programs. From these training programs, some of the entrepreneurs do a pitch, and in this pitch we have the financing network partners. And then we have 3 situations: the business creation, the project growth, and there we are going to intend to create a network of service providers that will help the entrepreneurs to grow the idea. And the other one is the quick one. The entrepreneurs can pick. So,
okay.
So it's like that, how to reach out to people. Yeah. Okay.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Any of the other areas want to Enfield?
I think one of the interesting things about this question is, what does a local authority have to offer local businesses? Because a local authority is public sector, it's a big, unwieldy organisation, and I think sometimes there is a kind of scepticism amongst the local community is, what can this big municipal organ tell me about how to run a business? I will ask my brother-in-law or my aunt or my dad, or, you know, somebody who actually runs a business, rather than a big public sector organisation. But okay, that's just a kind of observation.
But the simple questions are often the best. I mean, that's a very good point.
Yeah, but I think it's something that we have to kind of acknowledge ourselves and say, if we want to support businesses and make businesses, give them some genuine support and be a force for good, which obviously the role of the local authority in any area, we're the only democratically elected body in that area. We've got colleges, we've got police, we've got all these other public sector agencies, but we, the local authority, we are directly responsible for our local citizens. So in that role, I think we have a clear, and I think in Enfield we have a clear coordinating role, because the role of the local authority is not directly to help people get into work or to support businesses directly beyond mending the roads and collecting business rates and taxes. So offering business support is a kind of additional, I'm talking really slowly, so it's an additional function of a local authority, but I still think that we can do that through partner agencies, like working with our local Chamber of Commerce, like working with our town centre managers, because in Enfield we have a number of small town centres. So it's our role is really as a coordinator to commission the Chamber of Commerce to say, we want you to set up, I mentioned the sector boards, where we look at issues around recruitment and retention. How can we ease up legislation, or how can we help you through those the morass of public funding? And I think one of my colleagues, was it you mentioned the fact that the language of government to access grants is very cumbersome. And I think one of the things in Enfield, we have a large community who don't have English as a first language. Even if you do have English as first language, it's pretty baffling, isn't it? So I think the role of local authority is to demystify, as you mentioned, demystify that process of getting access to funding, demystify the process of any kind of grants and easing things up, but also creating business incubation units, start-up areas where we can offer facility, like our colleague from Germany had this sort of business hub, and what we saw in Avilés, where there was a converted tanning factory which was offering small spaces for new business startups at €70 a month, which was fantastic. Which is, you know, you have somebody start off in their bedroom, and then they go in, and once they got, is it the other lady talking about? Yeah. No, well, yes, like the lady this morning was saying, she started off in her home, and then gradually, as you need more space, you go into somewhere like that for maybe 2 years, whatever, and then you go and, you know, buy your own premises or red room, it becomes self-sufficient.
Can I quickly comment on that? Because going back to my point, when I said the cities, at least in Italy, they don't have any institutional role to take care of economic development. However, on the other hand, since they have an institutional role in caring about social issues, it may be that working for a healthy entrepreneurial and innovation environment is both a remediation for social issues that have already emerged and a preventive approach for them not to repeat it in future. So maybe it's just a matter of taking a different standpoint, and if we do, then we realize that city may have a role. It's not in the legislation, at least in Italy.
Exactly. Yeah. I would endorse that. I think we don't have a direct role, but we create a role for ourselves as a coordinator, because helping people get into work and supporting business will address a lot of those other social problems that we have a direct responsibility in addressing.
But I guess that's also related to the issue of outreach, because if that's not the typical role of cities, then people will not come to us to ask for this kind of support. So
I think that's correct. I'm going to move on swiftly there. I'm going to go very quickly to Graham and Susan, but as soon as you've done your point, Matthias, time to warm up, because we're going to be looking for a contribution from you on that point.
Chris, thank you. One thing I was just going to add to what this lady said is, of course, that the role of local authorities in the UK at the moment is clearly one that's big town as a statutory function. And the same for every public body, regardless whether it's police, fire, NHS. The overriding responsibility is to provide your statutory function. Now, unfortunately, some of the issues that fall out of statutory function you're doing because there's nobody else to do it. So one of the bigger issues, I think, is that what is the role of local authorities in business support and funding? Well, that needs defining at a higher level, because there isn't a very clear lead about what your responsibility is, statutory responsibility.
That's very true.
I would say practical, that's the key word, is roles, because you don't want different entities to be something they're not. So the public authority is not like a private company. So what is its natural role? What can it do? And that's also where partnership comes in, because you partner with other people because they bring things that you don't have. So the public authority is what it is, but you get that from other people.
I think we're going to have a plenary session coming in here now. Okay, so you've got a really quick one to add. Anything else?
Is there any particular one of those subjects up there that it's hard for you? Which subject up there?
Okay. I think on part 3 it is very important to get in contact with founders. Our access to them is to go to schools, for example, and to go to the university. This was another situation in the former time, but I think in the future we will focus more on these two groups, students, and we think this is the future. And another special access is to go also to American people. This is a special situation in our area, but I think it can be give good progress for our area. We talk with these people and with the citizens, and we will hope that we can support this. I think I talked to the other points in my presentation, so I think it isn't necessary to repeat.
No, it's just for this. There's a part 2 on the exercise.
There's 2 things in my role authorities
Yeah.
and how to reach out to people. It's two of the themes that come out.
Is everyone in agreement that that kind of sums up our strong feelings from this session, and we can communicate those onto the wider group?
Because they just want an off-the-cuff succinct point that you draw out, fresh from it without really thinking it too much.
Okay, does that do it for us? Sort of. Yeah, are you happy to put flesh on these bones if we should be needed to?
It's made within the parameters of what's possible, but you just try and bring out some immediate succinct points that come to mind given your different backgrounds.
I think there's a couple of things, Chris, on here that.
Fantastic.
One more short comment. I think it's often a big problem with the local authorities and maybe in the city administration that they do not think in business categories, and so it would be a very nice thing if you came in contact with the staff of the city administration in a very earlier stadium. For example, if you connect the staff of the city administration with other staff of other private companies, they can talk on an early time about this topic. But I think you have to start during the training of the staff of the city administration. If you will wait 20 years or 30 years, you cannot change anything. But if you go on a very early time and to the staff of the city administration, and you create moving programs, changing programs between the public and the private economy, so maybe it can go for progress.
Brilliant. Any other burning points? In which case, thank you very much for taking part in this session. I'm going to, you might, if you need to get to the little gap, grab a coffee, you can probably do so, but I think the plenary session is about to start in here, so if you need anything, grab it quickly, and then I think probably we'll be back in here just to wrap up. Thank you.
Fatima, do you want to use it?
Can
of course.
What percentage are you?
No, 31, but use it and I put it next.
No, that's nothing.
No, let it. We can
I
put it on.
I'm 29%, but I'll just give it another 10 or 15,
okay,
yeah?
Okay.
That's very kind of you, thanks.
Thank you. But there's multiple plugs.
Yes, I would. Yeah. Are you coming to my story?
We have got good students, then I think some of them searching for interesting places in your internship. Do you think that it would be possible to get it in connection with companies here from the UK?
We speak to work, for example, as you can learn, do this. Yeah, good selection presentation as well. That would be interesting. That's the kind of thing I might hope to stimulate you to do.
We have
He's interested in organizing internships from German students that know what to do here and vice versa. Presumably there must be lots that could be done if it could be sorted.
We have on our university a special subject. It's for consulting, it's for economic consulting and so on. And I think we have got some they are very interesting to make interns. Maybe an unpaid intern to get experience in this topic.
So I think that Michelle Lucas or Kimberly Bright, who work on Learning Teams here, would be the person to have a conversation with. They're on the other, they're on the other tour at the moment. So when they come back,
and vice versa, send them to Germany. They've got lots. Because it would be filling out a young person's, some work experience in Germany, and you're moving them to a new, particularly if they haven't got out.
What you might be able to do is if you can email through some details of it. We have 2 knowledge transfer programs that run in this program, and they have funded, they fund those placements to go individually to go with companies. Now it's international, it gets very complicated. I know that they have dealt with those requests, so they might be able to help with those, and they may be able to support you guys. So keep jobs on. Thank you. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right, and Michelle will be back and have a conversation.
Yes, right.
Lovely. Thank you. What was your
Yes. Because I can email it to you if you like.
Would you mind?
Then, I'll do that.
Excellent. will be at the network group tomorrow at 7.
Thank you. Go to university in the summer. Compared to days
You can just get off
this is very expensive.
Yes, it's very good to
We can't live away
no pleasure. Thanks very much.
So we come home. What I would like to do is to look at find a local business and say this young person is in, I don't know, Scotland somewhere, studying law, accountancy, business, whatever. They're coming home in the summer. You, business, can you provide an internship to this young person to give them some work experience as part of their degree? And I think it would be quite, even if it's unpaid, then it's better than nothing. But it's also a way of